This happened to me last fall in 2021, and I haven't gone hiking alone since. My name's Henry, and I've always been a nature guy. I love the outdoors, the fresh air, the quiet, the sense of freedom. But after that day, the woods don't feel the same to me anymore. I remember it was a crisp October morning, the kind where the air feels cold but clean. I had the day off work and decided to head out to a trail about 30 minutes from my house in South Carolina. It wasn't one of the busy ones with families and joggers. This trail was tucked away, quiet and peaceful. Exactly what I needed. I packed my usual gear, water, a granola bar, my phone, and a flashlight. I knew the area pretty well as I often come here, and I figured I'd be back before the sun sets. When I got to the trailhead, my car was the only one in the lot. The first hour of the hike was uneventful. The leaves had turned shades of orange and red, and the ground was soft with fallen foliage. The only sounds were the crunch of my trusty boots and the occasional rustle of a squirrel or bird. I felt good, relaxed as usual. But as I got deeper into the woods, that feeling was different this time. About 2 miles in or so, I started noticing how quiet it had gotten. The birds stopped chirping, and even the wind seemed to have died down. It wasn't just quiet, it was dead silent. That's when I got this weird feeling. You know the one, like someone's watching you. I don't know how to explain it. I stopped in my tracks and looked around. The trees stretched up high, their bare branches like claws against the sky. I didn't see anyone, but the feeling wouldn't go away. Hello? I called out just in case someone else was on the trail despite not seeing any vehicles at the car park earlier. My voice echoed through the woods, but there was no response. I then shook it off, convincing myself I was being paranoid. Maybe it was just the stillness messing with my head. I kept walking, but I couldn't shake that uneasy feeling I had. I decided to take a break when I found a perfectly fallen log by the trail and sat down to drink some water. That's when I noticed something strange. On the ground, just a few feet from where I was sitting, were tracks. At first, I thought they were from a deer or maybe a bear, but the shape was all wrong as I looked closer. The prints were large, bigger than my hand, and had long claw-like marks. I went and crouched down to get a closer look. Whatever had made these prints wasn't something I recognized. They looked unnatural. A chill ran down my spine. I tried to convince myself it was probably just a big dog or maybe a prank someone had left behind. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. It's not something I've ever seen before. I decided to head back to the car as it was getting late. As I started to head back, I heard it. A low guttural growl. It came from somewhere behind me, deep in the woods. I can feel my heart pounding so hard. I turned around very slowly whilst scanning the woods. At first, I didn't see anything, just the normal shadows and leaves. But then, about 50 feet away, I saw it. A tall, maybe 7 or 8 feet with long, spindly limbs figure or monster that didn't look right. Its skin was pale, almost gray, and its face, I don't even know how to describe it. It had red eyes and its mouth was too wide, filled with sharp, uneven teeth. For a moment, neither of us moved as we exchanged eye contact. Then it started to move forward with its long-ass claws dragging along. That's when I knew I had to bolt down the trail as fast as I could. My heart was racing and my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The sound of branches snapping and heavy footsteps pounding the ground told me it was following me. I did not even dare to look back, afraid I might get tripped over by the branches. The trail seemed to stretch on forever for some reason this time. My legs was burning, and my lungs felt like they were on fire, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. After running straight for a while, I finally saw my bright yellow BMW through the woods. I sprinted to it whilst fumbling with my keys from my backpack to unlock the door, and threw myself inside my car. Door slammed so hard that the whole car vibrated. With my hands shaking, gasping for air, trying to process what had just happened. I tried to peek over the woods to make sure that creature wasn't anywhere near me. But then my curiosity betrayed me as I was looking at the edge of the parking lot, just where the trail met the trees. It stood like staring into my soul. I had never been this nervous in my life before. The monster-like creature didn't move. It just stood there, watching me with its red and hollow eyes fixed on mine. I didn't wait to see what it would do next. I started the car and immediately peeled out of the lot as fast as possible, The gravel started kicking up and left a smoke trail behind. Few days since this incident had passed, I swear to never go back to that trail ever again. I told my friends and the police about what happened, but most of them didn't believe me. They said it was probably just a bear or maybe I was just out of my mind. But I know what I saw with my own eyes, and this is honestly so annoying. Sometimes when I'm alone at night, I think about those hollow eyes and that twisted grin. Got me having chills. I make sure to always lock my door at night just in case it would recognize me. Else I wouldn't be able to sleep at all. I wonder if that monster is still out there waiting for someone else to stumble into that woods. I heard stories about that place having some really weird monster-like animals, but I never thought one day I'd actually be so unlucky to encounter it myself. This story happened in a small, quiet town that I used to live at a few years ago. It's the kind of place where everyone knows each other, where the whole town don't lock their doors at night as it's located on the hills. However, things started to change when this incident happened during the night of Christmas Eve and had left everyone deeply traumatized. Lily, an 8-year-old girl who lived just a few streets over from me. She was bright, cheerful, and loved to play in the woods behind her house. She used to visit our house in the evening for my mum's cookie pies. It was honestly the best. That evening, her parents realized she hadn't come home for dinner, which isn't the norm for their daily routine. At first, they thought she was just playing late with me at my house. But as the sun set, they began to search house by house. But still, there wasn't any sign of her anywhere. By nightfall, Lily's parents began to worry and gathered the whole town to search for Lily. Everyone got their flashlights and dogs combed the woods, shouting her name in hopes to find her. I had never seen the town this crowded before. "Lily, Lily, where are you?" But there was no answer. The search went on for 2 days. Everyone was involved. Parents, neighbors, even the local police. Outside of our town, the woods were dense and stretched for miles, with old trails and hidden caves that hadn't been explored in years. The locals wouldn't usually go this far only if it's necessary. People found small things, a shoe, a broken hair tie, but no sign of Lily herself. It was like she'd vanished into thin air. Her parents were desperate. I remember seeing her mom, Mrs. Carter, standing at the edge of the forest, tears streaming down her face as she begged for Lily to come back. One day later, something strange happened. Lily's father, Mr. Carter, was searching deeper into the woods when he noticed a narrow trail leading off the main path. He followed it without hesitation, pushing through thick bushes until he came to a cave hidden by vines and moss. When he came back after discovering that cave, I remembered him yelling outside, asking us to follow him. We were skeptical at first. The path we took to arrive there wasn't exactly easy to pass through. It took us around 2 hours. At first, all we could only see was pitch dark, the air damp and cold. Her parents leaded the way in the cave whilst using their flashlights to light the way, their voices echoing off the walls as they called for their daughter. "Lily? Sweetheart, are you in here?" And then they saw her. She was sitting on a rock in the middle of the cave, her back to us. Her little pink dress was dirty, we could still recognize it, and her hair was tangled, but she was there. "Lily!" Mrs. Carter cried, running to her hoping she'd finally found her missing daughter. But as she got closer, she stopped. She could feel that something was off. Lily turned slowly to face them, and that's when they saw it. Her eyes. They were completely white, no pupils, no color, just blank, milky white. But that wasn't the worst part. She was smiling. A wide, unnatural smile that stretched too far across her face. It didn't look like Lily at all. As we stood there, frozen in shock, Lily tilted her head towards us and spoke. But it wasn't her voice. It was low, raspy, like multiple voices speaking at once, as if she was possessed by a demon. "You shouldn't have come here." The words echoed in the cave, bouncing off the walls. Her parents tried to move, to grab her, but it was like their feet were glued to the ground. Then we heard it. A faint whispering, coming from deeper in the cave. Dozens of voices, all murmuring at once. We couldn't make out what was being said, but it made our skin crawl and immediately sent chills down our spine. Mr. Carter reached out to grab Lily, but before he could touch her, the whispers grew louder, almost deafening. Shadows began to move along the walls of the cave, twisting and writhing like they were alive. We were stunned. Lily's smile. They grew wider. Lily stood up, her head still tilted. "You need to leave," she said, her voice no longer her own. Mrs. Carter screamed, and Mr. Carter immediately yanked her back toward the entrance. The shadows that was on the wall earlier seemed to follow us, reaching out with long claw-like shapes as we ran. When we finally burst out of the cave, the whispers stopped. The forest was silent again, but it didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the calm after a storm. They looked back, but Lily wasn't following us. She was still in the cave, standing in the darkness, smiling creepily. The Carters and us stumbled back to town, shaken and pale. We tried to explain what we'd seen, but no one believed us. The next day, a group of townspeople went back to the cave, but Lily wasn't there. All we found was her pink dress, neatly folded on the rock where she'd been sitting. The Carters moved away a few months later, unable to bear the terrifying and traumatic memories. The rest of us lived there for a couple of months, trying to forget and pretend like this never happened. But how can you forget something like that? No one knows what happened to Lily. The cave is still there, hidden in the woods, but no one dares to go near it. Few years had passed. The locals always say that they hear faint whispers coming from the forest during the night, and every now and then, someone will swear they saw a little girl in a pink dress standing at the edge of the trees, smiling. Eventually, all of the town residents, including me and my family, left that scary place. That town was completely gated off and shut down for good now, avoiding trespassers to break into it. Some call it the Cursed Hills.